today for today's ASM, which is, in my opinion, extra special. Anytime we get to have our alumni come back and share with our community, I feel is a really valuable moment. And so I hope you enjoy that today. I have to say that my only experience with sharing the stage with this person didn't go so well for myself. It was the 25th anniversary gala, and Njeri was one of our key speakers and just lit up the stage while I was surprised to be asked to be up on stage and kind of stumbled all over the place. So hopefully this goes, I'll try to be as brief as I can so we don't do that again. Njeri graduated from Boston University Academy in 2013. Very big in the performing arts and languages and obviously academics, as I can remember as an athletic director. After she left BU Academy, she went to Yale and studied applied mathematics with a concentration in biomedical engineering. Pretty average stuff there. Since then, from what I can tell, she has been at Goldman Sachs. I see in 2017, 2018, she was a analyst for some risk. Yeah. And then 2018, 2019, you became a senior analyst. So I don't know how that works. In 1 year, you become a senior analyst. Impressive. Also a board member of Windsor Music. Teaches violin, plays violin. She'll go into all of this. Math tutor. The list goes on and on. One quick story of and she doesn't even know about this, that I have with Njeri was I'm a Dunkin' Donuts person and had never really wanted to do Starbucks. I was a little intimidated by the menu over at Starbucks, didn't know what all that was. Went over and gave it a shot because I saw her in line one day. She didn't know I was two people behind her. I'm looking up there and I'm seeing the whole grande and vente and like, is that Spanish, Italian, macchiatos. I'm still like, okay, I'll listen to Njeri. I'll figure it out when I get up there. And she gets up there and she goes, "Bonjour, mademoiselle." And her and the barista start carrying on the whole conversation in French and just laughing and just the whole time. And I just did what I would do in those moments. I looked at my watch like I have to be somewhere else and backed out. I ran over to Dunkin' Donuts. Same thing when I after one day. Anyway, that's enough for me. Please welcome Njeri Grevious.
Hi everyone, how's everyone doing? Good. Okay, so I have my fancy Starbucks up here, so look, perfectly in line with the intro there. Just being here gives me so many memories about what it was like being a BUA student. I can't believe it's already been like more than 5 years since I graduated BUA. It still feels like just yesterday whenever I walk in here. I was telling David that as soon as I walked into like the Ziskin lounge, I was just like, wow, this brings back memories. Do I have homework? I don't know. I just started, all the memories came back. So I'm very, very excited to be here, and I look forward to telling you about some of my experiences like pre-BUA, like during BUA, post-BUA, but I also want this to be interactive. So I know that we have time at the end for questions, but if you guys have like a big question that's burning, I don't mind you raising your hand and like talking about it. I mean, I want this to be as comfortable as possible for you and all parents that are here as well. So, my life pre-BUA. So, I know a lot of us in here are very talented in so many ways, whether that's artistically talented, like academically talented, sports talented. For me, I started music at a very young age. My parents made it a point to make sure that I started piano at age 3 along with my siblings, and then continue with string instruments after that, starting at age 7. So, before I even like really started sinking into academic life, I was going to music school every Saturday for most of my young years, in elementary school and middle school. And so, music was a big part of my life and a big part of my schedule. And so before joining BUA, I was really focused on, learning about myself as an artist, and gradually getting to know myself and what I wanted to actually study and focus on, whether it was like academically or for a career. So I was actually homeschooled for elementary school. My mom homeschooled me and my siblings. And so I came from that environment transitioning to middle school, and I thought to myself, during my homeschool years, I really loved math. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, always trying to do all my math homework, pages first. I was definitely that nerd, but I'm so glad I was that nerd, because during middle school, it didn't feel like I could just be my nerdy self around other people I went to school with. So coming to BUA, that changed things. I realized I was not the only one. I had lots of people to support me in my nerdiness, and I loved that. So elementary school I was homeschooled. Middle school I went to a public charter school, and it was a breeze for me actually coming out of elementary school when I was homeschooled, because I kind of got to choose my own schedule a little bit, focus a lot on music, but also I had the flexibility to advance quickly in the things that I thought were important to me, mainly like my math and science studies. So coming into middle school, I really focused on that. And then at the end of middle school, I didn't realize that private school was an option for me, but I had a lot of encouraging mentors at the time, including my mom, and I, started learning more about different options for schools, and BUA being one of them. I applied to 5 different private schools, including 2 all-girls private schools for high school, and I remember my BUA visit day. It was so incredible. I remember walking into BU Academy and already feeling like, whoa, this is a different environment. It felt like a mixture between, what I dreamed of when I came to college, or like what like advanced studies would look like. But I also noticed all the class sizes were super small, so it was very intimate. I felt kind of put on the spot, but I enjoyed my day because I got to sit in a Latin class, I got to sit on a history class, and I got to just be around the BUA campus, which I also found very unique because, I know that as BUAers, we take it for granted. We come here every day, or the GSU is like home for us, and like all the BU schools, we take classes there, and BUA is just, we're used to it. But for me, coming into the school for the first time, it was different because I started to see like how BUA related to the BU campus and how integrated it was. It felt like I was just part of this one giant institution. I didn't feel like BUA was completely separate from BU and all that went there. So I immediately walked into like those classes, and I felt like I was already challenged just being in that environment. And then it was cool too because I also got homework. I didn't get homework on the spot, but I got to like watch everyone else do the homework, and I got to like follow along in like the Latin class and do some assignments as well. And I studied Latin in middle school, so it was already nice to like have the opportunity to continue to see what Latin would be like. So that was my BUA first day experience. I got to sit in on a math class as well, and I loved it. And I knew that math was kind of something I wanted to study, so it was really important to me being in a place where I could continue advancing in math. So when I decided to accept BUA as the school I go to for high school, I was extremely excited. And one of the things that I really looked forward to was just the opportunity to study with the other students. I liked that at the end of each day there was a reading block, so that way I could study with the other students and learn more and ask questions to the teachers. I love the fact that the BU library, the Uyghur library, was right down the street and I could just go there and study. It all just made me feel very, very at home, and like I was taking charge of my own education, which I loved. So, for some funny stories here. So, I did a lot of music at BUA, and Dr. A is my idol, yes, right now, but at the time, he was like my music teacher, and I really loved like how into the classroom he was. I spent a lot of time just like taking course with him, but also he found out that I was studying classical music, I was studying violin, and so we spent a lot of time, integrating that into my music studies at BUA. I got to be part of the chamber groups and play sometimes. I also got to work with him like after class and ask him questions, which was lovely. And like he knew a lot of my teachers at the music school that I was studying in, because I went to the New England Conservatory Preparatory Program for all my Saturday classes for music growing up. And so having Dr. A and his experience with that institution and knowing me and my skills, it was very helpful for me to be like, oh, this is what I'm learning at NEC, how does that relate to the classes that we're taking here? Like, how does that relate to this piece of music that we're studying right now? And so that was extremely inspiring. He also, helped me as I was applying to the Boston University Tanglewood Institute, because I did a couple of summers at that institute there over this, throughout high school. So, and he knew a lot of the teachers there. So I just felt like everything was coming together when I was at BUA. I had teachers able to support all aspects of my life, academically and musically, and I don't think I would have gotten that anywhere else. So I really want to share with you is we decided to. Dr. Ray is very ambitious, and I love that about him. And so we decided to do Mozart's Requiem one year as our performing work. And we actually got to sing with some singers at BU. And so it was a large chorus to support us, our small chorus. And then we had the BUA chamber group play with us. And honestly, that was one of the most memorable and magical concerts of my life, because we were all challenged. I mean, it's a big work, and we were, only so many of us, but we were able to make it work. I remember Dr. Horn on the timpani playing with us. So I loved how, in that particular concert, we actually got to directly interact with BU students, specifically BU choral students. We got to use a BU space. We got to use the Psy Performance Center, and I loved that. I also liked being able to, just challenge myself and learn a work and spend all those extra hours after school, rehearsing and doing music, which I was already doing after school. So I felt that BUA really became an extension of my life and the things that I was interested in outside of academics. So at the end of my BUA years, we had this the famous BUA thesis. And so for my thesis, because I was particularly interested in doing something science, math related, I worked with Dr. Shannon Cunningham, who's now at Carnegie Mellon, but at the time she was at BU running the auditory neuroscience lab here. And she's also the mother of 2 BUA graduates, and so I was very excited to work with her. And I got a unique experience that I feel like I was just blessed to have. So when I got to work in her lab, I actually did an internship summer after my junior year with her before starting my senior thesis. And that was great because it introduced me to the lab, introduced me to MATLAB coding for the first time, introduced me to just what it's like being a scientist and doing research on your own and navigating that for the first time. And then for my senior thesis, I decided to do a pilot study where I would be starting a little baby experiment, hoping that it would lead to other experiments in a similar space. So I looked at the effect of short-term music training on young adult brainstem plasticity. So it was pretty much looking at how music trains your brain, the effect that it has on the plasticity of your brain. And I used the EEG machine that was in the auditory neuroscience lab to be able to track that. And so being a pilot study, I had a lot of flexibility, and I actually designed all aspects of the experiment, all of the testing. I monitored all of the subjects. I was in charge of writing the results, analyzing the results, producing the tests that I use on the subject. So I had a lot of autonomy, and that I thought was precious because it allowed me to think about, okay, do I really want to go into this field? And it was also great because while I was working in that lab, I got to meet other BU students studying biomedical engineering. And that was the first time I ever heard the term biomedical engineering. I didn't really know about the different types of engineering yet. And so as I was talking to the students, they were just oh yeah, I study BME. This is what I'm focusing on here in the auditory neuroscience lab. This is why I like it. And that's when I started to think, okay, maybe this is something I'd like to explore more, because I knew that I was interested in mathematics, but I just didn't know what flavor of math I wanted to go into. I also kind of had a feeling that applied math would be a major of mine, but I always thought to myself, applied to what? So this was a great way for me to think about how to narrow my interest down. So doing my thesis, I am glad I got that exposure, and I was able to finish the project myself, but also I got some funding to be able to run the tests on my own, which was lovely. And so I finished the thesis knowing, okay, I think I want to study biomedical engineering in college. And so that led me to deciding to concentrate in that when I came to Yale. So now my Yale years a little bit and how BUA influenced that. So You know, the first person I interacted with when I stepped foot on the freshman campus at Yale was Matthew Rajak, who graduated in 2012 from BUA. So he and I just so happened to be in the same dorm. And you know, it was great having someone who like knew me at BUA, who I grew up with, like at Yale, to introduce me like, oh, this is the dining hall, these are the campus activities, and like he was also interested in STEM, so he was able to show me the ropes a little bit, and that was lovely. Josephine Massey, who also graduated BUA in 2011, was still there at the time, and so I got to interact with the both of them, and it was just nice having other BUA students at the institution who I can interact with, and I find that to be a theme really for like a lot of BUA students. I know that in my year, a lot of people graduated and went to some of the same institutions. Like we had a lot of people go to, you know, different colleges together. A lot went to BU, Brown, Yale, Stanford. So for me, it was just nice having that network of alums that I could connect to at the institution. Now, one thing that also really struck me while I was at Yale was the fact that I felt like I was, you know, in a new environment, learning about a new school, but I still felt tied to the academy and to BU in many ways. So my sophomore year at Yale, I decided to apply to a summer abroad program in France. And it's interesting because they asked me on the application, like, oh, can you provide recommendations? You know, any recommendations for you to attend this program? And I was running out of options because I only took like, you know, a semester of French at Yale, and that like completed my language requirement. So I was thinking, okay, who else can I ask? And I remember that while I was at BUA, one of the BU courses I took was a French linguistics course, and it was taught by Carol Schneider, I think, I forget her last name, but Carol Neidl, and she like led one of the linguistics courses here and the French linguistics course, and it was, I out of the blue thought, okay, how about I just email her? Maybe she remembers me from my BUA days having attended her course. I did, and she responded immediately, and I told her, oh wow, it's great to get back in contact with you. Any chance you'd be willing to write a recommendation for me to attend the summer program? And she said yes. And so, you know, that BU professor who I studied with, you know, my junior spring, I think it was, my junior spring, I studied with her and I took her course. All the way, like fast forward 4 years later when I was a sophomore at Yale, she actually wrote a recommendation for me to attend that program. And so I still felt very, very tied to the academy and very blessed that I had, even not just BUA professors remember me, but also BU professors remember me and have a connection with me and be willing to support me even after my time at BU and BUA. So that was incredible. Another thing too is that, believe it or not, I actually found Yale a breeze compared to BUA. Not all of it, but y'all are challenged here. I was challenged here. And it was great knowing that, you know, I came equipped to Yale with like all the hard assignments that we get here, the not so fun grades that we get sometimes in our first assignments. Like I've been through all that here, so it was like been there, done that. And so when I was at Yale doing homework assignments and everything, I felt like I already knew I had the autonomy that I built up at BUA, doing my own homework assignments, you know, knowing what professors to reach out to for help, like taking charge of my own research and my writing, my papers, you know, studying with other students. Those were all things that were first-time experiences for a lot of my classmates at Yale. It was their first time, you know, like being able to like study on their own, you know, like reach out for office hours, you know. And for me, I had already had that experience, so it was really easy for me to like melt right into the academic experience at Yale, and that was lovely. Musically at Yale too, some of what I did at BUA I continued. So being in chorus at BUA exposed me to a lot of early music as well. So we, like, Dr. Ray had us like learn a few madrigals, learn like some really, really old music from thousands of years ago. It's crazy. So when I was at Yale, I was just like, well, I really enjoyed those pieces of music that I got to study here. How would I think about what communities at Yale I could like feed into to learn more about that? And so I ended up joining the Baroque Opera project at Yale and performing the pit orchestra for that for my freshman and sophomore years. I also joined the early music chorus and chamber group. So I was doing early music for the rest of my Yale experience. Now, fun fact about that, the professor who taught me in that early music course at Yale, he leads a group in New York. And so now, having moved to New York and started my job there, I'm still learning from him and playing with him because he leads the Baroque Opera Project, the New York Continuo Collective, which is a collective of musicians, definitely like 4 times my age, but still, that I play with, every week or so, and we study some of the same early music. And so I got to keep that relationship that I love so much at Yale, studying early music throughout, even after Yale, which was lovely. So one of the funny experiences that happened when I first got to Yale, how I ended up in music, was there's this extracurricular bazaar that everyone goes to where like everyone sets up their own tent, like describing their clubs and like what opportunities to do at the school. And I remember going around and thinking like, oh, I don't really know how much music I want to do here, how about I just keep it on the down low. It was funny because I was passing by one of the orchestra tables. It turns out like at Yale there are several dorms and each dorm has their own orchestra. Crazy. So, one of the dorms was like advertising their orchestra, and I thought I could just like scoot right by, pretend like I didn't know anything about music, because like I was just trying to like figure out like what activities I wanted to do. I just remember hearing someone say, "Stop right there! You have a violin hickey, come over here and sign up for our orchestra." And I just remember thinking, how did they know? Like, I thought I could get away with it, and I put my hair all over my neck, hiding whatever, trying to get through and figure out what the other activities I could do were. But that was pretty cool, and what's also funny about that, I actually had to be inducted into the orchestra because they wanted to make everything fancy. So, they had this event where like after they made me sign up for the orchestra, 2 weeks later it was like the middle of the night and I was just about to fall asleep. And I hear this banging on the door and lots of screaming. "You got accepted to our orchestra! Congratulations!" Woo! And everything, and like everyone's just like it was just really, really lovely just knowing that I could continue music, but I wasn't really planning on it, but I got to continue the orchestra there. But just the excitement for all the students that they had about joining the orchestra and like making it a community, I mean, that was just lovely for me. And it kind of reminded me about how tight-knit the community of musicians or people interested in art here at BUA was. And so kind of going on to like my last years at Yale, I decided to concentrate on biomedical engineering and do my thesis in that area. So I actually continued my thesis based on the thesis that I did at BUA, something similar, where I focused less on looking at like the music aspect of it, but I focused more on the actual imaging and analysis of brain activity. And so in particular, I got to work with the head of the biomedical engineering department, the head of the graduate school of biomedical engineering, and I got to work with him on positron emission tomography and look at brain imaging. So I was able to do a lot of analysis on improving ways to better produce and analyze images that result from a PET scan. And that was fantastic, but honestly, I wouldn't have gone into that particular thesis work without having had the experience I had at BUA with my thesis, where I was able to see firsthand about the different types of brain imaging machines that were out there. And so I did my thesis with that professor, and that was incredible, and that's kind of how I ended up, closing out my years at Yale with that opportunity. And so now, where am I? I actually moved from New York to Jersey City. I never imagined myself being a Jersey girl, but my company just moved me from the New York office to the Jersey City office, and so I now am in Jersey. I have a beautiful backyard. I have my own little cute apartment. I live in a community of lots of musicians too, so there's been lots of music I've been able to do, and kind of what I really appreciate is that, I still keep in touch with a lot of BUA students. So turns out 2 nights ago, I Skyped Mia Dana, who was in my class, and she was asking me, like, "Oh, and Njeri, how's everything going? Turns out I accepted a job at Yale. Can you tell me more about Yale?" So she's now going to work at the Yale Law School, and that's been wonderful. And I got to tell her about my experiences going to Yale, what it was like living in New Haven, and so we just caught up on our lives and everything. But it was just cool, like how I'm still so much in contact with a lot of my BUA peers. And Mia and I actually talked about something really interesting. We noted that some of our friendships at BUA were stronger than some of the friendships that we developed at our own colleges. And that just speaks to the amount of like time that we spend together in like this smaller school. We're doing a lot of assignments together, we're learning from each other a lot. We have a lot of challenging assignments to work on. And there was just so much individual attention from teachers as well. We felt like, you know, our BUA friendships were going to last like a lifetime. We were, of course, like in college we made friends, but it's interesting, some of the most lasting friendships that we both had were coming straight from our BUA experiences. So it was just great. It was so lovely to catch up with her. And so, you know, we talked about her moving to New Haven and her coming down to visit me in Jersey and me going up to Yale and visiting her and just like continuing our friendship. Another peer that I recently caught up with is Gabby Diaz, who's right now in Spain teaching. She joined my sophomore year while I was at BUA, and we just completely kicked off a wonderful relationship after that and saw each other throughout college. She went to Harvard and I went to Yale, so every Harvard-Yale game, football game, we'd always make a point to meet up, like, you know, catch up, stay up late, go to all the performances and events together. We're not into football, but still, like, it was just nice to be able to spend time. And so I feel like a lot of the friendships and the relationships that I've had from the academy have really lasted throughout my life until now. I now work in finance as well, which is a little bit different, but I don't think I would have ended up in finance had I not had the exposure to like the engineering and math concepts that I thought were most important to me, like from BUA and throughout Yale. So I'm gonna stop talking because I feel like I'm rambling at this point, but I would like to open up for questions if this is a good time.
It doesn't matter what I say up there, she's not a good person to share the stage with, and now you get it. Questions?
Don't be shy. Anything and everything is under the sun. It's fair game. Yes, I'm in the red jacket.
Sorry, I'm visiting Kevin, but you know, biomedical engineering, natural progression would be medical research, medical school. How did that get you to finance and Wall Street? I'm just curious.
Good question. All right, so for me, one of the things that I really was looking forward to coming out of BUA going into Yale was studying applied mathematics. And part of the reason why I picked applied mathematics as opposed to pure mathematics is because I wanted to be around a certain set of thinkers. I wanted to be around engineers. I wanted to be around people with various focuses in the STEM field. So that's first and foremost why I wanted to study that major, and biomedical engineering was just one of the ways I could apply math. And of course it was influenced by my thesis, and I ended up continuing a thesis in the medical area in college. I also did a little bit of an externship right before graduating, where I spent 3 weeks at a startup in Ohio that specializes in developing biomedical technology. And so I got a lot of experience doing that, and I thought for a long time that I wanted to go into that field, but for me, I kept thinking about how much it wasn't just about like the focuses that the interest and the curiosity that I had in the biomedical field. It was more just like who I wanted to be around, what kind of thinkers I wanted to be around, what sort of activities I wanted to do. In finance, I work actually in quantitative finance. So looking at risk and risk analysis, and a lot of the engineers that I work with, they study all sorts of engineering, like, you know, like biomedical engineering, electrical engineering, environmental engineering, advanced physics, some really, really advanced subjects in the engineering space, and I liked being around that neurodiversity. For me, that was the most important part of how I saw my future work life panning out. I really thought about who I would be around. Now, that is to say, because I have so much, I had so many academic experiences in the medical space so far, I'm not completely ruling out the possibility of going back and doing an advanced degree in biomedical engineering. But what's nice is that because of my experience at BUA and because of my experience doing my thesis at Yale with the head of the Graduate School of Engineering, I have people to recommend me for that space should I decide to go there, just because I've been able to do some solid work in that space. but I like having that option, So finance is giving me an opportunity to explore like what other options in engineering I can go into. But if I wanted to specialize, I also have some solid experiences and recommendations to allow me to pivot into engineering, to biomedical engineering full time if I wanted to. Good question. It could be about something non-academic and like more fun, like about my life just in general, what I do every day at home. I don't know.
So, I don't know, I kind of got the vibe from the system that you were kind of talented in language. Do you still like use any of the language that you've learned and like learn a new one?
Yes, absolutely. So I speak Latin every day. Kidding. So that's a great question. So at BUA, one of my favorite parts of BUA was the Latin declamation contest because I loved just like learning, like having some Latin to memorize, diving more into the language, into the grammar, and understanding the text that I'd be studying for the contest. I loved like listening to other people declaim. That was one of the focal points of my experience at BUA. I absolutely loved it. And also studying Latin really, really helped in just like other aspects of my life, like when it came to taking SATs or like, deciding to finish my language requirement in French. I really love languages. It's a little bit much. So every day, so let me just give you a picture of this. So when I come to work every morning, I am speaking Spanish for the first 2 hours of the morning because all the maintenance staff in the cafeteria, they're from Ecuador, they're from the Dominican Republic, they're from Puerto Rico. So like I'll just speak in Spanish to them and just like start my morning up like that and like just like it's just amazing. And then towards the middle of my day, a lot of the strats and engineers that I work with are from France. Or from Francophone countries, so I'll speak in French to them. And then and then my roommate, he's actually from Burkina Faso, and so he and I speak French whenever I get home. My boss is from Brazil, and so oftentimes during the day, she'll be speaking to me in Portuguese, and so like that's been wonderful. My roommate in college, her parents are from Portugal, and so whenever I catch up with her parents, I can't speak Portuguese just yet, but I can understand everything they're saying. So I'll respond in Spanish, but they'll speak to me in Portuguese. I am just starting to, learn a little bit of Italian and capitalize on that. I hope to travel to Italy one day. That's one of my dreams. I just love languages so much, and I want to use them as much as possible. But part of how I've been able to learn them so easily was because I had such a core foundation in Latin. Like the grammar structure, the vocabulary, it just came to me so easily. And it's so useful. The amount of people who like connect with me easily through language, it's super wonderful. Like there are some people at work that are just hella annoying, okay? But like as soon as I speak to them and like, if they tell me that they're from like Spain or from France or whatever, I start speaking to them in like their native tongue, they're all of a sudden like, okay, I can mess with you, I can work with you, you're all right, don't worry about it. So like when other people can't get them to like do some assignments, I can be like, so, see you later. Or like whatever, I can get it to work. So I mean, like having like that propensity for languages, it does wonders for you when it comes to networking and connecting with people. So that. Any last questions? I know we have a couple of minutes left.
I think it's obvious that you're very careful of which school you choose.
Oh, I'll be careful. Yes. Yes. Hi. In the blue shirt. We'll go for you first, and then we'll get you in the tape back.
I was not then pointing out where you were asking.
Oh. Okay.
Okay. I was gonna say first I love your locks and second I was like
okay, so it's funny when like I have my little like afro puff going on. I was iconic, and then whenever I went to perform the BUA course, I often like had my fro out completely. Amazing. But then I started getting tired of doing my hair every day. Not about that life. So when I started college, I like got my locks. It took 14 hours, but I mean, sacrifice up front, and then the benefits come later. And so here I am, and it's been growing up for 5 years. So thank you.
yeah. And I was just gonna ask, like, in a lot of the fields that you say you're in, I'm sure you're not very populated with a lot of African American people. So like, how do you deal with that in like your work life and your
Excellent question. So, I mean, I think that was part of the beauty and experience being at BUA and the BU environment first. So like being so close to BU's campus gave me a good representation about like the kinds of people I'd be studying with and being around for the rest of my college experience and my work experience. So I was kind of used to being one of the few or the only in several classes here when I was taking BU classes and some BUA classes definitely, but like it gave me an opportunity to like get comfortable with that, ask a lot of questions, like, but also challenge that as well. And so for me, it's not that you want to be comfortable in being the only one or being one of the few, but you have to learn how to navigate it and be a little bit brave. For me, studying applied mathematics, there was a point in my studies where all the classes I was taking, I was the only one. But I know that part of what BUA gave me was a lot of confidence to be able to, do the homework, take the test, just be in those classrooms, sign up for the courses. So I feel like I got a lot of encouragement from teachers and faculty that I had what it took to be able to be successful in those areas. And I took that confidence and I was able to bring that with me, through the rest of my BUA experience, through my Yale experience, and now through work, because I'm definitely one of the only ones I'm one of two on my floor that's not an admin working in the engineering groups. So it definitely has its challenges and sometimes can be lonely, but I think that I have enough confidence to not feel like I'm being squashed under expectations of what others have of me because I'm so visible, if that makes sense. So, one of the things, I'm actually a few hours from catching a flight to Hawaii, so you guys are like right before my vacation time, so I'm excited to meet you guys, but I'm also excited for my vacation. But like when I go for my vacation this week, when I get back, I'm actually arriving a day earlier than I want to. Short vacation, but it's okay. When I come back, I'll be at work doing a conference. So, I'm first of all, I identify as African American female, but I'm also an out bisexual woman as well. And so for me, being in spaces and like just helping other students who identify as queer, like get comfortable in seeing like what options there are out there for them and thinking about what spaces they could enter into, even though they might be the only ones as well, is very important to me. So this Saturday, I'll be speaking on a bunch of panels at Goldman Sachs, my company, where there will be over 300 students from across the nation who will come, who identify as queer, who will come and like learn more about opportunities in finance. And so I'll get to speak to them about my experience being an out person in the workplace, my experience, like just getting into the finance field at first, like having no family experience in that area, but also just like letting the students know that it's okay to be comfortable in who they are, and that workplaces like mine that seem so traditional, corporate, so conservative or whatever, like you can still be yourself and challenge those barriers at work. And so I'm very, very excited for that. This is actually the second year I've decided to do that conference. And so that's one of the things that I actually care a lot about at my job, and that I cared a lot about at Yale as well, like having that interaction between groups. And so that's probably a concept that a lot of these students wouldn't have thought prior. And so I'll just be speaking about my experiences, like being involved in those spaces and being involved in those communities and just helping out in that way. So that's what I'm excited to come back for on Saturday, but I'm excited for all to before that, which is being on the beach in Hawaii, in the mountains. So thank you so much.